What is up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about some killer basics in Dead by Daylight. Jumping right in, we have killer movement speeds. There's 3 things that will cause killer movement speeds to be consistent among every killer. Their lunge attack ups their speed to 6.9 meters per second. Carrying a survivor will reduce their movement speed to 3.68 meters per second. And missing an attack will again reduce their speed down to 3.45 meters per second. Most killers have a base movement speed of 4.6 meters per second, which equates to about 115% of a survivor's movement speed, and that's without using their power. Some killers have a ranged power that will deal damage from maybe across the map or something similar. To counteract that, their base movement speed does get reduced to 4.4 meters per second. These killers are often referred to as 110 killers because their movement speed is about 110% of a survivor's speed. The shape is very unique in that his movement speed starts out at 4.2 meters per second, or 105% of a survivor's movement speed, until he tears up his power at least once. Then he goes up to his normal 115, and it's just kind of a basic killer. The nurse is very unique in that her maximum base movement speed is 3.85 meters per second, or 96% of a survivor's running speed. Survivors move faster than the nurse when she's not blinking. When the nurse is blinking, it does up her movement speed to about 13.35 meters per second, but again, when she's not blinking, she is slower than the survivors. Movement speeds are very important when survivors are looping because it tells them how much they can actually do the loop for. If a survivor is looping a 110 killer, they can get more out of that loop than if they were to, say, be looping a blight who has mobility and is also a 115 killer. There are some killers that are easier to loop in smaller areas, like Nurse, because over a large area she can get her blinks and be more accurate. In a small area it's harder for her to blink, and she's more likely to blink into a wall or hit something around that area. Nurse is something that's not super basic, but we can also jump into how killers track survivors. Scratch marks are one way that killers can track survivors. Scratch marks are only there when survivors are actively running through the trial. It's one of the more reliable ways to track a survivor, but experienced survivors can manipulate these marks to throw you off of their trail. Most survivors aren't great at doing this, but it's just a matter of them wiggling their character to make their scratch marks go up walls, or maybe look like they're going one direction but actually be going the other. Scratch marks are only visible for 10 seconds at a time in a 1-8-1 pattern. 1 second to appear, 8 seconds of full brightness, and 1 second to fade away. Another way to track survivors is through bloodstains. After getting one successful hit, then survivors will start leaving these pools of blood. They're hard to see unless you're using perks like Bloodhound or you have an ability like Victor, but experienced killers know how to use these to track them more than just using scratch marks. Grunts of pain are also directional, so while a survivor is injured, each one of them makes a unique whimper, and these sounds are very easy to track survivors with. It's also helpful to have nice map awareness, so knowing what direction a survivor would want to run is kind of more important than just staring at the ground looking at their marks. The bloodstains, kind of similar. They're just on the ground, little pools of blood. They might be outside of lockers to let you know that a survivor is either in the locker or has been near that locker. And grunts of pain are things that are just in the game in general. There is perks like Strider that makes them a little bit louder, but they also have perks like Iron Will that makes them a little bit quieter. The meta right now, I believe, is Off the Record, and that is a perk that will completely silence the grunts of pain when a survivor is unhooked. I believe Low Profile is coming out in the next update as well, which will make them to where they're silent, won't leave scratch marks, and they're just kind of there if they are the last survivor on the board that is not dying, hooked, or dead. Keeping an eye out for scratch marks is very important because it will let you know where a killer or survivor is. Perks like inner focus on the survivor side will also let you know that someone might be running away from the killer. I do have an example of what scratch marks looks like, and here it comes. So in this, I just took my own character and played killer while I had someone run around and show us what scratch marks look like. As you can see, they get really, really bright, and then they start to fade. There is a couple things to remember, and that is, as a killer, you control how long the chase happens for. You control the direction that the chase happens in. You have control over how fast generators are done, and you have control over how long someone's in a match. If you decide to camp or tunnel, then that person doesn't really get to play, and they just kind of get to sit there. If you tunnel somebody, they could die super, super early, not get many points. It's just not fun for really anybody. And that's kind of all of your killer basics. So we'll just do a quick recap here. The killer is in control of the match. Once they lose control, it is hard to take that back without some tactics like camping or tunneling. But the killer needs to stay in control. Staying in control is the key to winning any match. But also try to be respectful for how long people can play. Try not to camp or tunnel someone out very early. Let the survivors get unhooks because you get more points for getting multiple hooks. The game is not about kills, regardless of what anybody says. Defending the generators and the gates is much more important than a chase. And last but not least, let's remember to have fun. After all, it's a game. Let's all make some new friends. But that's it for this video, and be sure to like and subscribe for some more.